Hey everybody, Corey here coming at you with 7 quick knife reviews and kind of like a brand review. I've got 7 Reate manufactured knives on the table, and honestly, in trying to do reviews for each individual knife, there was so much overlap in terms of quality and fit and finish, which we'll talk about in a second. It just felt so redundant. So I want to show you the knives, and then I want to go over them one by one, pretty much just talking about my notable qualities on each knife. So first off, I want to point something out here. For all of these knives, I'm not going to say anything about fit and finish, about quality, about blade play or centering or lock rock or blade grind, because on every single one of these knives, they are all perfect. They're all absolutely perfect, and that's what Reate does. Reate has blown my mind in terms of the products that they put out. And as a matter of fact, there are some knives on this table that I originally did not want. I saw them and I didn't want them. And when I found out they were made by Reate, I said, you know what? I gotta get my hands on that. I gotta really see if this is what Reate does on every single knife that they produce. And I can tell you it is. So if you realize that I'm not saying anything about fit and finish and in that usual kind of stuff, assume that it's perfect, because it really is on all 7 of these knives. So up first, I'm just going to show you these and then we'll break it into the sections of the video. We're going to have the Giantmouse knives, Ace Sonoma. Next in line, we are going to have the, I'll just open them all right now. We're going to have the Peña knives, X Series, full titanium Mula. Next up, we are going to have the Chavez knives Redencion Street. This is from the Ultramar series, which is their production line, kind of like the X series for Peña, which is made by Reate. We have the Ochs Osprey EDX. I've already done a first impressions video on this, but it's made by Reate, so we're talking about it again. Next up, we have the Reate branded New Torrent. And yes, it is literally called the New Torrent. Apparently there was a regular Torrent, and then when they created a V2, they just straight up referred to it as the New Torrent. Ooh, spoiler alert. Next up, we have the Reate Knives K2. This is the Knife Joker exclusive blacked out edition, which I do think looks pretty darn good myself. Spoiler alert again. That action. And then finally, last but not least, we have the Reate K3. Stick around for the Reate K3, or just be lazy and jump to that part of the video. The Reate K3 is easily one of my top 2 knives. If you told me to get rid of my entire collection and keep one knife, the K3 could totally be there. All right, let's jump into these knives one by one. We'll talk about the things that stood out to me the most for each individual knife. All right, so first up, as promised, we have the Giantmouse knives, Ace Sonoma. So on the good, the ergos are suspiciously good, and I would wager that it's because of this heavy chamfer that you can see that they have on both sides of the handle, on both sides of the knife. But essentially, it kind of gives it a rounded feel when it's in your hand, so there are really no sharp edges on the entire knife. And then one other thing I want to point out on this one, go figure. They put the jimping where it belongs. So many times manufacturers put the jimping back here, and it causes you to have to do this weird, almost like cramp your thumb just so you can utilize the jimping. Whereas for me, when it's up here, this is where my thumb wants to be. This is what's comfortable for my thumb. And that is where they put the jimping. So I think that's pretty cool. You know, for me, I would say maybe this is a little subjective. I would refer to this as discreet and classy. Some people say it looks like an EDC steak knife, and I get where they're coming from with that, but it's so sleek. It's not fat, it's not big, it's not scary, but it is a relatively long knife. So it's a knife with a lot of real estate, which is part of why it's so comfortable, but it's also not intimidating, and it's not too over the top, and it's not too ridiculous. And then finally, let's get a close-up. That finish, the stonewash that they put on the gray titanium version and even the black PVD version, it's got this very worn kind of aesthetic to it. And honestly, as someone who actually likes to carry their knives, even if they're expensive, it's nice to essentially have the knife already kind of scratched up, because you don't care about what happens to it. You don't care if the pocket clip just gets another scratch on it, because it's already got a working finish. Let's talk about the things that kind of annoy me or that I think could be a little bit better. So this knife, it's so clear with the shape of this flipper tab and how downward sloped it is. You can technically, like, you can light switch it, but it's so obvious that that's not what it's made for. This is a true push button all the way. And for some of you who enjoy fidgeting with your knives and enjoy flippers because you like to fidget with your knives, this one might not be the one for you if you're really concerned with fidgeting, because it is truly only a push button. That being said, this is something that I've heard a lot of people say about this. It is extremely sensitive to lock bar pressure. You think you can't light switch it, you know, by default. If your finger is on that lock bar at all, it is so sensitive to pressure, it will not open. I've seen people complain about that. For me, you might not want to do this to your knives, but I actually reduced the lock bar tension. I bent it back a little bit. I still don't have lock rock, but it helped. It helped a lot. So you can do it, but it's something you might not want to do. And then, last but not least, the pocket clip is a very shallow carry. You know, if I put my thumb at the tip where it would be, let's do this. That's a healthy amount of knife sticking out of your pocket. Now, granted, it's a skinny knife, so it's not that ridiculous, but I mean, that's a healthy amount of knife sticking out your pocket. If you're not into shallow carry, this isn't going to be for you. But overall, very impressive, and this is one of the ones where if I had to pare down my collection, this could stay in there. Next up, the Peña Knives X Series Mula. So what originally drew me to this was the clean design. Obviously, it's very sterile. There's not a lot going on here. But also what drew me to it are the wide chamfers on all of the edges of the handle. And you'll see there's a recurring theme with that. That's something that I look for in all of my knives now, because it provides you with that rounded feel. It provides you with that very contoured feel, and it makes all the knives that are designed that way extremely comfortable. This one has no internal milling, which gives it a very solid feel. The action is glassy smooth. It's not drop shut. Don't confuse those two things. But there's essentially no friction inside the pivot. This one's really satisfying to kind of just play with. Again, I talked about the clean aesthetic. Yeah, it's nice, but you know, if you're into it, it's nice. If you think it's boring, well, then maybe this one's not for you. And then the only other thing I'll say, again, the ergos it's a comfortable knife to hold because the edges are essentially, you know, rounded off, even though it's more of an angle, but it still gives it the feeling of them being rounded. That being said, in terms of ergos, they don't utilize the real estate as well as they could, and that's primarily because of this section right here. This might not look like a whole lot, but if they would have moved that choil up a little bit further, say halfway through the pivot, you'd be able to get a much better grip on this knife. As it stands, you can see that there's barely any knife sticking out of the back of my hand. And I find that where the knife kind of tapers off at the end, my pinky just kind of gets caught and it doesn't know what to do, and it kind of feels like it's slipping off the knife. Compare that to, this isn't a Reate knife, but compare that to the real estate on the 520. Look at how much space that they completely used all the way up to the end of the handle. And what that does is, even though these knives basically have the same size handle, look at how much more knife I have left on the 520 because of just, you know, how they chose to design the handle. So that's one thing I'll say. And then the only other thing, and other people have complained about this too, the pocket clip is very stiff. There's a lot of tension on that pocket clip, and when you combine it with these lock bar relief cutouts on this edge, getting it in and out of your jeans, it's so tight, and it really wants to grab your jeans. That being said, I've never really had an issue. It's just a nitpick, to be quite honest. Next up, the Chavez knives, Redencion, Ultramar, Street, blah blah blah. It's like 900 things. This one is customized. Your handle will not look like this, but your blade will. This is obviously the drop point version. Let's talk about this. Ergos. This is a chunky, thick boy. And any knife that's this thick, inevitably, they always end up being comfortable because they fill out your hands so well. They give you so much to grab onto. So you're not really running into edges, even if they are in the knife, because it's so rounded because of how blocky it is. That sounds weird. It's rounded because it's blocky, but if you've ever held a thick knife, you understand what I'm saying. It doesn't feel like you're giving it the death grip. It feels like it's comfortable because it fills out your hand well. The next thing I'll say, this grind. This is the sharpest knife I've ever received out of the box. I don't know what it is. This thing was tree-topping hairs like nobody's business. It's got a nice compound grind, right? And that's what we're looking at here. The side closest to the heel, or the section closest to the heel, has a hollow grind, and the side closest to the tip has a flat grind. That's going to give it rigidity out towards the tip, but it's going to give it some sliciness closer to the heel. So that's really nice. I've listed this next thing as both good and bad. It's chunky. It's thick, okay? And if that's something that you like, it's going to be good for you. If it's something that you don't like, you're going to absolutely hate this knife. It is a thick boy. It's got a thick handle. It's got thick blade stock. There's no internal milling. You could just as easily make jokes about this one. You know, if you don't want to stab your enemy, you could just pitch this at them. And if you hit them in the dome with it, they're going down. Because, I mean, it's a brick, okay? The other thing I'll say, I don't quite know why. It's got one of those actions, and I'm still trying to figure this out. It's got a chalky feel. It's not that it's not smooth, but it almost feels, I don't want to say gritty, it's just chalky. That's the best way to describe it. For me, I'm not really into that. I feel like it's something that could smooth out, and maybe over time it will. But straight from the factory and for a few weeks now, it's just got that kind of chalky feel to it. So if you're not into that, you're not going to like that. And then last but not least, man, the jimping on these. I get that it's part of the aesthetic with Chavez, and it's what they're going for, right? Big, overbuilt, overdone, super thick, super chunky. It's just not comfortable. It's very functional. I mean, it grabs you to death, right? If I shove my thumb into that, it'll chew me right up. But it just feels unnecessary. Again, maybe it's like a stylistic choice, but it just feels too aggressive. People have complained about the pocket clips in the past being a little bit over the top, but as of now, if you get a Gen 4, they will also ship this with a normal-looking pocket clip without the big old skeleton on there, so that's something you might not have to think about. The Ochs Osprey EDX is next up on the list. Go look at my first impressions video if you want more details on this, but long story short, this is just a darn great knife. It's got a very compact feel, even though it's kind of the same overall length as the Chavez, but that's because it's thinner and it's more narrow. It's got such a compact feel. It really is a great everyday carry knife. It's got a utilitarian blade shape. It's got a utilitarian handle. It gives you just enough of everything that you need for it to be a great knife without it being too over the top or too underwhelming. I think stylistically, they hit it out of the park. It's got some milling, it's got some micarta, but it's not over the top, right? We don't have like alien-like lines going on here. We don't have crazy materials. It's not intimidating. It looks like a very nice, peaceful, usable, well-designed knife. Overall, it's great. I've already said that a million times. My only complaints on this thing, really same as in my review, flipper slip, I call it. I don't know why they didn't put jimping on the top of the flipper tab, because it can either be push buttoned or it can clearly be flipped. But when I was getting used to flipping this knife, my finger slipped off of it quite a few times, and I just don't know why there's not jimping on it. I feel like it could have benefited from that, and maybe if there's ever a V2, it's something that they change, but Yeah. Other than that, I have a bunch of question marks on my notes here because this is one of those knives. It was a struggle to find anything wrong with it. It really is that good. Nick Chavez put it on his list of gems, and it is. It really is. It is that good. Next up, the Reate branded New Torrent. This one is the bronze version. They had one in like a navy blue anodization as well. And they had one in a straight up raw titanium version. I can't even, this was my first Reate, and this is the one that got me hooked on Reate. So I know that this is subjective, but can we just take a second to appreciate what they've done here? Even if stylistically this isn't something that you like, look at all the things that you're getting, right? You're getting anodized titanium. You're getting a carbon fiber inlay. You're getting an anodized milled titanium inside of the carbon fiber inlay titanium. You're getting your anodized hardware. You're getting your domed concave pivot collar. You're getting your machined and anodized dimpled backspacer. You're getting a ceramic ball on the pocket clip. They've done so much with this knife for it to be a production knife that even if you don't like what they've done, I feel like it's very easy to appreciate what they've done. They really went above and beyond with this thing, and it speaks for itself, okay? The action on this, bada boom. It was one of my first gravity shut knives. It's been consistent the whole way. It's a big, chonky boy, okay? So, yes, it's unique. Yes, it's got a great action, and yes, it's built like a tank. But boy, this is another one. Can I confirm? Yeah. No internal milling. This is 6.4 ounces. This is another one you could just as easily pitch it at someone, and they're going to be going down. It's thick everywhere. It's thick in the handle. It's thick in the blade. I'll tell you right now, this is not the best slicer in the world. I don't care how good of a job they did on that grind. It's thick, and it's going to be thick. This is more of like a, I don't know, if you're actually going to use it, it's more of a man's knife. You've got this brick in your pocket, and it's so thick, and it's just ready for you to just rip through stuff because it's so big, and it's not going to be a slicer, but it's not a bad knife. It's just, it's got a lot of qualities that revolve around it basically being huge and chunky. But my God, the line that they've drawn between beauty and over-the-top overbuiltness is really impressive here, because you don't usually see an overbuilt piece that is this exotic. But that's all I'll really say about this one. It's gorgeous. It's unique. It blew my mind. It got me hooked on Reate, and I have no regrets. Next up, the Knife Joker exclusive K2 black DLC, you know, all black out, all black everything. For this one, I like the milling. I think the milling is interesting. I think more companies need to do more exotic milling on all of their knives. By the way, it is not asymmetrical. It's on the lock bar side too. I think it's just interesting. There's so many plain, boring titanium knives out there that it's nice to finally see designs like this where they just do something to the knife and instead of leaving it just so boring. The action, you can already see. This has one of the smoothest actions I've ever felt on a knife ever, and of course, it's gravity shut. You can see that right here. Finally, the ergos on a knife that is so straight, because you've got this kind of palm swell here and you've got the recurve back here, it's just more comfortable than it looks. It's not the most comfortable knife I've ever held in my entire life, but if you're familiar with knives that have a straight, neutral grip like this, they're usually pretty, like, middle of the road, 5 out of 10, nothing really to talk about. This one impressed me. Still not the best, but it impressed me for a knife with such a neutral grip. This is another one I got a lot of question marks on trying to find something wrong with it. The only thing I can come up with, really, the jimping is useless. It is really useless. It's almost even slippery, dare I say, but other than that, I have no qualms with the pocket clip. The fit and finish is good. The design is nice. They come in other variants if you don't want the all blacked out one. I guess if you don't like Tontos, but that's not objectively bad. It's just if you don't like Tontos, you won't like this knife because it's a Tonto. Other than that, it's great. It kind of falls in the same book as the Osprey, where it's just got a lot of good, and the only thing I can say bad about it is maybe it's not your taste, but it's really hard to find something objectively bad with the K2. And then last but not least, the K3. This is an amazing knife. This is arguably my favorite knife in my collection, and I've already said this, you know, if someone told me I could only keep one knife, I think I can confidently say that it would be the K3. The ergos are amazing. The action is so glassy smooth. It makes me physically ill. And what I really like about this one, it's got a relatively thick blade stock. Not over the top, but it's relatively thick. But they put a hollow grind on it. And man, I tell you what, this thing cuts like nobody's business. And for whatever reason, on knives that are usually this big, this is a full-size knife. This is a 4-inch knife. The manufacturers don't usually put hollow grinds on them. And I don't know if it's because they just want to go with, you know, we want it to be big and bulky and rigid. But man, that's where a lot of these knives fall behind, is they're big and they're clunky and they don't cut well, kind of like the New Torrent. This one with the hollow grind, amazing slicer. In terms of the bad, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I don't like to put aesthetics in the good or the bad. This one's very busy. If it's your taste, that's good because you're going to like it. But if it's not your taste, you're kind of just stuck with it. And I will say, it's got a very futuristic look. It's got an almost alien kind of look where, I'll admit, they went a little crazy with it. It's very exotic. It's very polarizing, and you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. Me personally, I like it. I don't think it's the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. I can appreciate it for what it is from a unique perspective. If I had my choice, it would be a little bit more tame, but from an overall usable knife perspective, I just love it. It can't be beat. The only other objective complaint I could really find, the pocket clip, once again, little too stiff. It really requires a lot of force, and this one really, even though it's got that ceramic ball, it does still manage to really grab onto my pants because it is really, really tight. But other than that, oh my god. I mean, this one, it's got great ergos. It's got a usable blade shape. It's big, right? This is a knife that you could depend on for the rest of your life. Maybe if you don't want a big EDC, it's not up your alley, but overall, if I had to, you know, cut my knife collection down to one knife, I'd like a big boy because I'd like it to be able to do everything that I would ever need it to do for the rest of my life. This one, it's just too good. This one is just too good. Guys, that's my review on my Reate collection. Reate as a brand, they blow my mind. I've got a Sharp by Design Mini Tempest on the way, which, again, was one of the knives where I originally saw it, and I said, I don't know if I want that. Then I found out Reate made them, and I was like, yep, I guess I'm going to pick one up, apparently. So, Reate just does such good work, and I get it. If you're on the, like, USA bandwagon and you just don't want to support anything that's made in China, it is what it is, I guess. I'm sorry, you're going to miss out on some of the best knives on the market. But, man, if you can afford these and you can go get them, it's at the point where I can't buy anything that's not Reate at this point. Like, everything manufactured by Reate just skyrockets to the top of my list, and that's where I'm at with Reate. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Get yourself a K3. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.